Good morning, my name is Shannon. I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research at the University of Canberra, and I'm talking with Michelle Grattan this morning. Good morning, Michelle.
Hi, Francis.
Well, we have to talk about the Western Australian election, don't we? You have been in Perth during the week covering this election. What can you tell us about the feeling of the electorate over there at this point in time?
There certainly seems to be a really big swing on against the Barnett government, and the polls that are out so far have shown that Labor is on course to win. One always stresses with elections that lots of things can happen at the last minute, and it's a big task for Labor. It's 10 seats, which would require a uniform swing of 10%. But of course the Western Australian economy has really crashed since the end of the mining boom. People are uncertain, they're discontented, unemployment has risen, housing prices have fallen, so there are all the classic signs of an electorate that's in a mood for change. And also, of course, this government has been in since 2008, so there's the it's time factor, which is a big thing.
Well, lots of things happening there, but aside from the major contests between Liberal and Labor, One Nation has certainly added extra spice to the campaign over the last couple of weeks. How do you see their position at this stage?
Pauline Hanson's been campaigning in Western Australia all this week, and of course it's been a very controversial campaign because she started the week with her statements that parents should investigate before having their children vaccinated. She had to retreat from that when it was pointed out there were no tests available. She's extolled the virtues of Vladimir Putin, which is hardly a popular stand to take, let alone a rational one, and she's made more anti-Muslim comments. In Western Australia, she's been particularly in the regions. She's been greeted on the streets as a celebrity, but around her, the One Nation party has been really imploding. Candidates have been critical of the deal she did to exchange preferences with the Liberals, and there've been other gripes from One Nation people. She'd sacked the elderly couple who were the president and secretary of One Nation there. She's been accused therefore of ageism. It's really a mess. But the question is whether potential One Nation voters will worry about any of those things or will simply use One Nation as a vehicle for a general negative comment about politics as it is today.
So the preference deal seems to be creating tension as well between Liberal and Nationals, and how is that going to play out?
Well, this was the deal that the Liberals did to preference One Nation over Nationals in the upper house, and in exchange One Nation is preferencing the Liberals over Labor in the lower house. The Nationals, of course, were outraged. In Western Australia, the Nationals are in an alliance with the Liberals, not a coalition, but that alliance means they have ministers in the government, so they're obviously part of the government, and they're really beside themselves over this deal, and that's dogged Premier Colin Barnett during the campaign. He's also had to distance himself from One Nation in terms of policy and saying there's no other agreement, it's just the mechanics of the voting system that's driving us to the preference deal. Some potential One Nation voters too, I think, are not all that happy about the deal, and some One Nation candidates, because One Nation is outside the system, as it were. That's how it portrays itself. It's protesting over the system, and here Pauline Hanson is doing this sort of insider deal.
Well, the polls do seem to show that the Labor opposition have the momentum. Would a Labor win have implications nationally for Malcolm Turnbull?
I think it would have implications because it would be another blow to Conservatives. Now, Malcolm Turnbull's only made one very brief appearance in the campaign, and it's pretty clear that he wasn't wanted back. But nevertheless, I think that it would be seen as Conservatives, Liberals being rebuffed in various places, and of course Malcolm Turnbull has very poor polls at the moment, so it would be just seen as the bad times are all around us, and that's not good for Malcolm Turnbull when he's already on the back foot. And of course the result will be watched very carefully for how the One Nation vote goes, and that will influence how preferences are looked at in the Queensland election, which is coming up, and later on in the federal election.
On a different topic, Malcolm Turnbull intends to weigh more strongly and publicly into the economic debate, with major speeches leading up to the budget. How do we read this approach?
I think we read that the government is struggling, if not somewhat panicking. And while at one level it's very sensible for the Prime Minister to take a higher profile, the fact that this is now coming out and being talked about in the media does mean that it also paradoxically will have a downside, because it just reinforces the point that people think that Scott Morrison hasn't performed the Treasurer job very effectively. So he's got to run around saying, no, doesn't mean any comment on me, it's all fine, we're a team, we work as a partnership on the budget, but nevertheless that message is there that Scott and Morrison needs help, needs some propping up. And so every move Malcolm Turnbull makes to try to improve his government, improve its position, tends to somehow backfire. And I guess the lesson is that when things are going badly for you, everything else seems to feed into that negative narrative.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. It's been interesting speaking with you.
Thanks, Francis.